Shakyamuni Buddha. Before we get started to the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking our teacher's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Alrighty. Alright, so today we'll be continuing our discussion, our Dharma talk on the 4 Noble Truths. So today we're on the 3rd Noble Truth, and then next week we'll do the last, most important one, the 4th Noble Truth. So as we discussed the first, 2nd Noble Truth the past couple of weeks, the first Noble Truth is that life is suffering, or in life there is suffering, right? And we've discussed the many types and forms of suffering there are, and being able to recognize the suffering that we are going through, right? Suffering is such a big word, but really it's the translation of dukkha to suffering is not the best translation, so we try to use dissatisfaction instead. So in life there's dissatisfaction. And we discussed the ways of being able to recognize those dissatisfactions in our life, right? Which brought us to the 2nd Noble Truth, which is that suffering, the cause of suffering is desire, or more accurately, the attachment to desire, right? The attachment to our desires of whether it's things that we've wanted or things that we haven't gotten, right? We've gone through the different types of sufferings, there's 8 main types of suffering, right? Suffering of birth, sickness, death, aging, the suffering of being away from loved ones, the suffering of being with those we dislike, the suffering of not getting what we want, and the suffering of our sense pleasures. And so last time when we discussed the attachment to our sufferings, right, we kind of attempted to discuss why we should contemplate on why we are attached to our desires, right? Because not all desires are bad. There's good desires and there's bad desires. The bad desires are the ones we attach to, we cling to. So when there's a change in that desire, an unwanted change or a negative change, right? Whether it's not getting something we want, whether it's being in a place we don't want to be, having a job that we don't want, etc., right? For us, that's suffering. But suffering is also the mental suffering, it's psychological suffering, it's even spiritual suffering, right? A lot of people come to meditation practice, they're like, oh, I want to clear my mind, I want to have a clear mind, I want to be stress-free, I want to be depression-free, and they meditate, and they meditate, and meditate, they meditate for maybe, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and maybe they get nowhere, maybe they get very little results, right? And so they're not at the point that they want to be, so they either give up, or they, are discouraged, right, of their practice because they're not getting what they want. But then we come to the 3rd Noble Truth, which is the cessation of suffering. So it's like, hey, we are suffering, but now there's a way to end our suffering, right? There's a distinguished path that we need to practice, to utilize, to use in order to say, I'm suffering, this is why I'm suffering, I need to stop my suffering, and these are the ways I need to stop my suffering, right? The 4 Noble Truth is a formula for suffering, right? So each one, as I just mentioned, you go through it, right? There's a suffering. Why are you suffering? I need to stop my suffering, and this is the way to stop my suffering, right? It's a formula. So the whole aim in our Buddhist teaching or in our practice is to develop this reflective mind in order to let go of the desires. We have to introspect, right? We have to practice contemplation, introspection, to really say, this is suffering, this is why I'm suffering, and I actually need to get out of the suffering, right? As always stress, Buddhism, our practice, our meditation is not passive. You have to actively apply it to your life. You can learn all these teachings, you can learn all these meditations, you can come to every single Dharma talk, listen and read every single book, and become this well-known scholar or someone who knows everything, right? You're just book smart, but you don't actually apply any of those practices, then what's the use, right? You're just holding on a very heavy bag for no reason, right? But when we are able to say, or when we're able to apply those teachings or those practices to our life, right, it'll ease out. We can actually see where our path is leading us. We can see the fruits of our practice. And so when we reflect on the suffering, right, and we recognize the attachment to our desires, we recognize the attachment we have to the things we want to happen or to be, right? We talked about the ways of how we assume things, right? We make assumptions of things. We want things to be in a specific way. We want people to act in specific ways, or be a certain way, or to think a certain way, right? And so when they don't think like us, or they don't have our same mindset or mentality, then we get angry, right? Maybe we get frustrated. Now, especially around the election season, which is finally over, thankfully, right? We have all these fighting opinions, all these fighting different mentalities and perspective of things, and the whole country is just fighting, right? There's definitely no United States, that's for sure, right? It definitely wasn't. But there is so much fighting because everyone has different opinions, right? There's 7-something billion people in the world, so that's 7-something billion different opinions, right? They're all going to clash. They're always going to start fighting. There's no end to it. But what we can do, because I can't force someone to change their mind. I can't force Leon to think the same way I do. I can't force you to, be a vegetarian or be a Democrat or a Republican or whatever, right? I can't force you to do anything. But that's part of our sufferings because we want people to change. We want people to think like us, to do the things that we do, or to believe the things we believe. And so when they don't, then we get angry, we get frustrated, we defriend them, befriend them, whatever it is, whatever the case may be, right? But those are things we can't control, right? I can't control how Leon thinks. I can't control what you eat. I can't control what you study. But what I can control is myself. What I can control is my own mind. I can control the way I react to things. I can control the way I'm able to contemplate and introspect on things, right? That's something that we can control. I can control you, you can control me, but we can control ourselves. And that's where the power of our practice really lies, right? Because Buddhism as a whole is a mind-centered religion. It's very psychological, it's very philosophical. It's nothing that you can just read about. You can't just read about enlightenment and assume you're enlightened, right? You can't read about the Dharma masters and expect you're a Dharma master or a meditation master, right? So you really have to apply those things to your life, and unfortunately, we are in a semi-lazy society or culture, right? Where we want instant gratification, right? So we go to social media, we post stuff, and we want the 500 likes, 1,000 likes. We want the comments, we want the reviews, we want things instantaneously, right? We have no patience for things. We have no patience for anything, good or bad. And that's part of our problem, is the lack of patience. Because patience, again, is from us, is our own mind, right? We control our own patience. I can sit around waiting for somebody for 20 minutes, no problem. Somebody else can be sitting around waiting for 10 seconds is too much time for them, right? Their time is so worthy, right? Their time is precious. Their time is more valuable than yours or mine. And that's also part of our suffering, is that ego that we hold on to the things that we think should be, how life should be, right? Our ego, like I mentioned before, is always defending itself. It is trying to avoid the present. So it hates time. It only sits in the past and only sits in the future. And so when we try to concentrate and be in the present, it's like, no. Let's think about that past relationship that may mess up. Or let's think about the job I want in 2 years, right? It doesn't want to stay in the present. And because of that, we create all these false assumptions, all these false ideas and perceptions of things. And that's part of our problem, right? It's not somebody else that's causing it. And then part of that is also because when we understand that all this external stuff, right, is impermanent, then the happiness that it brings to us is also impermanent, right? Which is part of the desire. Our desire is that we always want to be happy. We always want to have the best of the best. We always want to have the most expensive, the fanciest, the most colorful, the whatever it is, right? And so when we have it, we're like, oh yes, I'm so happy I finally have it. I have the new iPhone, I have the new BMW, I have the big house, I have the six-figure job, right? You're happy, but how long are you happy for? 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? Eventually the happiness is going to go away and it just becomes something that's already part of your life, right? You forget that it's new until the next new thing comes out and you're like, oh, I need to have that. It's newer, it's fancier, it's bigger, faster, it's whatever it is. So when we understand, we're able to contemplate and really kind of pinpoint that those things they're impermanent. The happiness that it brings is impermanent. Even the suffering that it brings is also impermanent, right? Hopefully by this time next year, everyone's going to forget about this whole election season and how disastrous it was, right? We're going to forget about it. So if you're angry now, next year you're going to forget that you were angry. Tomorrow you're going to forget you're angry. Next month you're going to forget you're angry. So why are you angry? Why are you holding on to that anger, right? You're not holding on for yourself. What I have seen in life is when we're angry, when we lash out, when we debate, when we, go out and do stuff and yell and protest, right? We're not really angry for us. We're angry for the other people. We want other people to see that we're angry. We want other people to see that we're frustrated or whatever it may be, right? And sometimes some good comes from it, obviously, but really it's just going to create this darkness, right? This negativity in our mind because it's not the way the things are. It's not the way that we want it to be, right? Whether who wins or who loses, whether you wanted it or you didn't want it, someone's suffering, right? But suffering isn't because they lost or won. Suffering is because you didn't want them to lose or win, right? It's your own mind, your own mentality, your own ego saying, this should be the president, that he should not be the president, this should be this way, that should be this way, right? We make all these ideas of how life should be, right? How reality should be, but that's not the case. And once we are able to realize that and really contemplate and look introspectively in how our thinking works and how our ideas, our desires, our assumptions in life really works, we can kind of see a pattern of good or bad, whatever it may be, right? And from there, we can start working toward bettering our mentality, our ideals. But again, as I mentioned earlier, desire is not always bad, right? The good desire, because we have to have life desire, we have to have life plans, right? And we want to have aspirations, right? So it's not really about not caring about anything, right? Because that's just simply the pendulum swinging in the other direction. So instead of pulling, right, and hanging on to those things, we're pushing, right? We're pushing it away, and that's not something we want to do either, right? It shouldn't be coming from a place of apathy, but really a place from acceptance, right? The middle way. Buddha taught us the middle way, not the extreme. Neither extreme, right? It has to come in the middle. There's a balance to everything. It's just in life. There's always good and there's bad. It's not always bad. It's not always good. It's good and bad, right? It comes together as a balance. But again, we only want the good, right? We only see the good or we only see the bad. And we're like, oh, something good happened, right? I'm sure somebody knows somebody that they're always in a negative state. They're always negative about life, right? And if something good happens, then they're like, oh, it's just good luck, or it wasn't meant for me, or whatever it may be, right? They're pulling apart, they're taking away the goodness of it. But really, life is good and bad, right? Whether we choose to see it that way or not, there's always good, there's always bad. And to be able to stay in balance, to be balanced like that, right? And to see that this bad thing is not always going to be bad, this good thing is not always going to be good, right? They're too are impermanent. They won't last forever. And to be able to recognize that, to accept that, to allow it to happen, will really make us be able to let go of those desires or those feelings of loathing or complete happiness kind of just go through us, right? It happens, accept it, move on, whether it's good or bad. We don't want to cling to it, because if you cling to something that's good that happened to you, right, you're going to hold on to it because it feels good, right? It feels right, it makes you happy. But then what happens when it breaks? What happens when it expires or dies or whatever it may be, right? Where's your happiness now, right? Your happiness disappeared. Now you're angry. Now you're frustrated. Now you're depressed. So did that thing that caused you happiness really cause you happiness? Right? It didn't. For a short time it did, but not long lasting. True happiness is only within us. Our true happiness comes from being able to let go of those bad desires, to let go of those bad attachments, and to accept and recognize the impermanence in things, to accept and recognize the goodness of the good and the badness of the bad, and just kind of letting it balance within our life, right? Practicing that middle way. So there's really two main general steps to accepting our reality as it is, right? And the first one is to stop arguing with it, right? Stop arguing with reality. Whether president that got presidency won or lost, right? Whether you accept it or reject it, it is what it is. You personally cannot change it, right? Our vote counted, didn't count, doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, but once it's official, right? Whether you accept it or reject it, it is what it is, right? There's no point of fighting that reality, because that reality it's already happened. So sometimes we think, he shouldn't have done that, or he shouldn't be doing that, or this shouldn't be like this, right? These are just our negative thinking, because we want things for people to be a certain way, or things that happen a certain way, right? And it doesn't correspond to what we wanted. So arguing with the reality of something that's already happened is just going to cause us more suffering, right? Why are you arguing with something that already happened? You can't change the past. You can't predict the future, right? So what's the point, right? Live now in the present. That's the only place and time you can control. And so when we're able to stop that fighting, stop that fighting with reality, right? Then we're able to approach it with compassion and understanding, right? And compassion is just being able to recognize their suffering. So if we can really shift our mindset from how that person wronged you or hurt you, and really see that they too are hurting, they too are suffering, then we're able to really approach the situation or the problem with compassion and with understanding, because we understand and we recognize that I'm not the only person in the world, even though sometimes we think like it, right? We think that we're the most important. My time is more important than yours. I'm more precious. I'm more valuable, right? My hurt, my suffering in life is worse than yours, right? Okay, you're a cancer patient, but I still hurt more, right? Unfortunately, thinking like that happens. So we don't want to see other people suffering. But when we're able to recognize and really accept that other people too are suffering, hopefully it brings to mind brings to mindfulness the compassion that we should have towards them. Bring to mindfulness the understanding that they too are suffering. They too have a story of their own, right? We may not be able to see it, but something may be happening in their life that we can't see or understand. But that doesn't mean that we can't accept their suffering and show compassion toward them. And then the second step is to see reality for what it really is, right? So there's this concept of disenchantment, which is basically seeing things for what they really are instead of being misled or enchanted by them, right? So it's referring to all the assumptions that we make about reality once it kind of hits us, right? It's adding meaning or placing meaning to things that kind of happen, right? So, for example, if your husband forgot your anniversary, all of a sudden you doubt his love or commitment to the relationship, right? How dare he forget our anniversary, right? or maybe he's interested in arts and maths, right? And then you start daydreaming about him going to medical school or something, right? So this is really just another form of attachment, because we're assigning meaning in these conclusions and these predictions, right? We're analyzing these situations before they even flourish or finish, and then we encounter the suffering when it kind of reaches that point where we're like, oh, he really does love me, or oh, he wants to go to art school or something, right? So those conclusions or the assumptions that we made before have no meaning, and if they don't match up, then we kind of, sometimes we suffer, right? We don't want to accept the reality. But that can also sometimes cause new desires, because on the other side of the disappointment, right, there's sometimes we do really good at work, right, and our boss praises us for good work, and then we're like, oh, I'm totally going to get that promotion now, right? Or my son's doing really well and he's totally going to get a 4-point GPA, or whatever the GPAs nowadays are. But if you don't get that promotion, or if he doesn't get a full GPA, then we were like, oh, well, that sucks, right? Or we're just disappointed, right? We are frustrated that what we wanted to happen didn't happen, and that's our suffering. The suffering isn't that he forgot an anniversary or he didn't do well in school. The suffering is we wanted it to be a different way and it didn't, and so now we're upset. We're not upset at them, even though we are. We should be upset at ourselves, because we've made these conclusions that this is how I want things to happen, and when they didn't, then you're suffering. And so when we're able to practice compassion and really understand how things work, right, it really helps us to recognize that there's other perspectives out there, right? So by being able to acknowledge and accept that my perspective, my ideals or thinking is not the only one out there, right? It really kind of be able to open us up a little bit, right? It opens up our minds where we can then be able to loosen our grip on the world, right? And so instead of wanting things to be a certain way, or things to go a certain way, we should really just look at the world with by bearing witness, right? Instead of constantly analyzing, judging things, right? Because that's what we do. We habitually judge. We habitually add stereotypes, right? Unfortunately, in some parts of the country, right, there's stereotypical communities and sub-communities and cultures that we just naturally stereotype and judge because of what we've experienced or what we've read or seen in the past, right? And so when we see that, we're automatically judging it. We're automatically giving them a story without even knowing what their story is, right? So there are countless perceptions out there, right, for any one situation. Some of them may line up, right? So sometimes your perceptions, your ideas of things are correct, but most of the time they're not, right? And so if there's countless perception out there, then what is real? What is the truth? Where is reality? What is reality? What is the truth, right? If there's 7+ billion people and 7+ billion ideas and perceptions, then which one's right, right? We can go outside and there could have been an accident happen. Each of us are looking at the accident, and everyone's going to have a different conclusion of what happened. Liam may think that it was drunk driving. You may think it's texting. You may think that something crazy is going on in there, and just different ideas where we're all going to have a different conclusion. So if we all have different conclusions and ideas of how the accident happened, then which one's right? Right? We don't know. So the only reality of this is that something or someone exists and that something happened. And the only truth is that you are aware of it. You are witnessing it, right? So the truth there is not that they're texting and driving or drunk driving. The reality is just the accident happened, right? We don't add a story to it. We don't add the different conclusions. We're not analyzing. We're not judging it. We're just observing it. We're being aware of what happened. And that's how we need to approach things in life, right? We need to just bear witness, not add the conclusions, not add analysis and details, unnecessary details and storytelling to things, because then you start making up these perceptions of what you think will happen, what may be concluded later on, and when they don't happen, then you suffer, and if they do happen, then you're excited and you do it again, and then it may happen or may not happen again, right? So by bearing witness, by understanding that this is how things are, right? By acknowledging that reality is just what it is, right? And not adding more to it. It'll help us alleviate some of the habitual judgments that we typically do, right? Because we want things to be a certain way, or want people to think a different way or a certain way, and just wanting things to be so specific and so catered to our desires and needs, that if we are able to say or recognize and contemplate that not everything's going to be like that, then it'll really help you kind of let go of some of that suffering that may cause you later on, right? So right now we're kind of, we're constructing the new shrine, and there are a lot of times where things are moving on pretty steadily, pretty quickly, and we're all happy about it, right? And then there's times where very little work gets done, or very slowly, and then we're like, come on now, you need to hurry up, right? But we do that because for a certain amount of time, things were moving so quickly that we kind of got used to it. And so when it stopped being like that, then we started suffering, right? Instead of recognizing that things change, right? That's the whole point of impermanence, that even the quickness of the construction is also impermanent. There's going to be slow days, there's going to be fast days, right? People are going to get sick, people are going to quit or move away or whatever it may be, right? There's so many different things that could happen, but we don't care about that. We only care about how quickly things are being done, or how slowly things are being done. And because of that, then we just get upset, we get annoyed, we get distracted by different things, instead of just being able to take a deep breath and recognize that this is a form of suffering, right? Whether it's actually impacting you or not, it's still some sort of mental suffering, right? And so, especially me, I always have to remind myself, teacher tells me to be patient all the time, and I have to remind myself to be patient sometimes, because I, at least, grew up in a world, in a place, in a culture, and society where things move pretty quickly, right? Almost my entire career life, I worked in corporate, and corporate's very quick. It's very, deadline heavy, deadline impactful. So my life also works on deadlines, right? So I have to be able to kind of sit back and remember that life is not a deadline. There is no deadline in life, right? My life could end tomorrow, then what happens on my deadlines for next week or next month or next year, right? There's no point. So when we're able to open our minds up, recognize where suffering is coming from, right? I always tell you to, if you're suffering for any reason, to meditate on the why meditation. So you're literally asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why do I think this way should be like this or should be like that? Why do I feel like that person should be thinking like this? Why do I think or feel like this should have happened at this time, or this person should have done that, or whatever it may be, right? You're really asking yourself why, until you get to the core reason, right? And 99% of the time, it's your own fault. Whether you want to admit it or not, you're the cause of your own suffering because of our habitual thinking. I was reading something the other day about when I was listening to NPR or something, and one of the newscasters were talking about how people are so offended to be supporting this person or that person, right? They're so offended because they've acted this way, or they didn't act this way, or they've done this, or they didn't do that, right? So millions of people are offended. And I'm here thinking, why are you offended? This person doesn't even know you, right? Like these candidates don't even know you. Why are you offended by what they do or what you think they've done or didn't do, right? And for me, at least personally, like I really don't get offended because I don't care. Like I grew up a very sarcastic person. I've kind of may have become a little slightly a bully in high school because of that. But really, if you think about offense, being offended, it's only one of two things. If someone says something to you and you get offended, it's either something that's true or partially true or complete nonsense. So if it is true, right, why are you getting offended? It's something everybody sees. Why are you getting offended, right? When I was in high school, people were like, oh, you have a big nose, whatever. I'm like, okay, thank you. Like, I don't care. Obviously, I have a big nose. Like, why are you making fun of me for it? I already know. Everybody else already knows. Why is there a point of getting offended, right? Or if it's complete nonsense, then it's complete nonsense. Then you shouldn't be offended. You should be, the other person who offended you should be humiliated because they said something that's completely nonsense, right? So that's how I try to remember things. If someone's making fun of you, if someone's offending you, just think of it. Is it true? If it is true, then okay, whatever, who cares? If it's not true, again, okay, whatever, who cares? Either way, it doesn't really affect you, right? Their words kind of hurt you. Your mind telling you those words hurt. I should be hurt. I should be offended. I should be defensive, right? That's not your mind, that's your ego. Again, defending itself. Because your ego is like, hey, I'm this person, I'm important, I should be looked on like this, I should be respected. And so when someone bashes you or goes against you in whatever way, then your ego's like, okay, put up your sword and shield, it's time to start fighting. Don't fight. This is our ego. But we have to recognize that this is our ego causing us the pain. It's not their words. Your words can't hurt me, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt, or something like that, right? Is that what it is? So think of that. Just say that little melody in your head every time someone starts cursing at you or offending you. Big deal. Thanks for that. Thanks for that offense. Thanks for that encouragement, right? Whether it's encouraging or not, right? Laughing back was one of the parts of one of the commentary of that news piece was laugh at them, right? Laugh back. If they're trying to offend you, if they're trying to hurt you, just laugh. Then they're going to feel stupid because they're like, why are they laughing? Crazy person, right? So I'm going to stop there, right? And, you know, just remember why. Ask yourself why, right? Every time you feel the need to defend yourself or feel like this isn't worth it or whatever it may be, ask yourself why. Why am I feeling like this? Where is this feeling coming from, right? Will this feeling last? Because these feelings too are impermanent and they won't last. So there's no point of staying angry, because few days, few months, well, hopefully not months, but few hours, minutes, days, right? That feeling of anger or whatever is going to go away. There's no point of holding on to that anger. So by allowing those things to happen, by accepting it, by bearing witness to it, and really being able to unfold the reality of the suffering, it'll bring relief to you, right? It's like a weight off your shoulders, because you're like, okay, I really don't feel this strongly about this or that or this person or whatever, right? So I'll leave it to that. So that's the cessation of, hey, there's a way out of this suffering, and that way out is the Eightfold Path, which we will not discuss fully. We'll specifically just discuss the fourth noble truth, which is the Eightfold Path. But I won't go through each of the paths because it's pretty long. But next month, oh my goodness, next week, we'll conclude the last step of the formula of the Four Noble Truths. And hopefully you're able to utilize that and remember that formula whenever you feel any sort of suffering in your life, and apply that formula to whatever situation you're in. Okay. Any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? I don't want to hear. Okay. So we'll transfer the mirror and then go into chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full alignment. Okay, let's go to our general service. Speech and mind in perfect oneness I send. Heart along with the sound of the bell. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. Gratitude, we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Throughout space and time, may it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful effort, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripen. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Incense in the censer now is burning all the Dharma realm and preparing our sincere intention, thus fulfilling as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas.
practice of how we bow together.
Homage to the eternally abiding Buddha, the supreme Dharma and sagely sung throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. The fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya honored future Buddha, Manjushri great wisdom Bodhisattva, universal great conduct Bodhisattva, all Dharma and the magic mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. To Amitabha Buddha in the land of Ultim, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth stored great vow Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea-like Bodhisattvas. Moratnatrayaya Namo Harya Avalokitesvaraya Bodhisattvaya Mahasattvaya Mahakarunikaya Om Savala Sudanasasya Namaskritva Namanarya Avalokiteshvaralantava Namo Nilakanta Shri Mahapatashami Sarvadata Shubham Ashiyom Sarvasattva Namo Pasava Namo Bhagamavatetu Tadyata Om Avalokalokate Kalati Ishiri Mahabodhisattva Sabo Sabo Mara Mara Mashi Mashi Ridayo Goro Goro Gamyan Doro Doro Bodhaya, Horo Horo Pra, Horo Horo She, Sara Sara, Siri Siri, Soro Soro, Bodhaya, 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 Maitreya, Nilakansa, Trisharana, Vayamane, Swaha Sitaya, Swaha Mahasitaya, Swaha Sitaya, Ye, Shvaraya, Swaha Nilakante, Swaha Pranila, Swaha Shisamahokaya, Swaha Sarva Mahasataya, Swaha Chakrahastaya, Swaha Padma Keshaya, Swaha Nilakantam Pantalaya, Swaha Mofodi Shankaraya, Swaha Namo Ratnatrayaya, Namo Harya Avalokite, Swaha Om Siddhyantu, Mantra Badaya Swaha. Body is bringing morning light in concentration. My heart is at peace. A half smile is born on my lips. This is a new day, and I to go through it in mindfulness. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble sun, diligently bring your mind into meditation. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya, Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya, Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. One who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore the communication between them is inexpressibly perfect. Our practice and is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere, as my own person reflects in all Buddhas, to whom with my whole I go for refuge. Bring light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude. And living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion. Shakyamuni Buddha, the awakened one, to whom in gratitude. Through ignorance awakening our hearts and our minds, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, to whom we bow in gratitude. Mindfully working joyfully for the sake of all beings, Samanta Bhadra, the Bodhisattva of great action, to whom we bow in gratitude. To suffering, serving beings in countless ways, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, to whom we bow in gratitude. Awakening and loving kindness in children, sprouts, and all beings, the Buddha to be born, to whom we bow in gratitude. The way fearlessly and compassionately, the stream of all our ancestral teachers, to whom we bow in gratitude. gratitude. Dhamma is deep and lovely. We now have a chance to see it and practice. We vow to realize its true meaning. Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the deep course of perfect understanding, shed light on the five skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-beingness and Shariputra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. The same is feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, nor perceptions, nor mental formations, nor conscious, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of hell, no interdependent origins, and no extinction of them, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, because there is no attainment of bodhisattvas ground in perfect understanding. Find no obstacles for their minds, having no obstacles they overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realize all Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at full right and universal enlightenment. Therefore, one should know that perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth, the mantra Pramita should therefore be proclaimed. Gate gate para samgate bodhiswaha. Gate gate para samgate bodhiswaha. Gate gate para bodhiswaha. Invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering, and you know how to listen in order to understand. We invoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will sit, listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or react. We will sit and listen so that we will be able to see what the other person is saying and also what is being left unsaid. We know that just by listening we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person. Invoke your name, Manjushri. We aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or we will look deeply so that we will be able to see and understand the roots of suffering through the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffering, thus freeing ourselves and other species. Invoke your name, Samanta Bhadra. We aspire to practice your vow to act with the eyes and heart of compassion to bring one person in the morning and to ease the pain of one person in the afternoon. We know that the happiness of others is our own happiness, and we practice joy on the path of service. We know that every word, every look, every action, and every smile can bring happiness to others. We know we practice wholeheartedly, we ourselves may become an inexhaustible source of peace and joy for our loved ones and for all species. Your name, Kshitigarbha, we aspire to learn your way of being present where there is darkness, suffering, oppression, and despair, so we can bring light, hope, relief, and liberty to those places. We are determined not to forget about or abandon those in desperate situations. We will do our best to establish contact with those who can a way out of their suffering, those whose cries for help, justice, equality, and human rights are not being heard. We know that hell can be found in many places. Earth, we will do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth and to help transform the hells that already exist. We will practice in order to realize the qualities of perseverance and stability, so that like the earth we can always be supportive and faithful to those in need. Take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. In the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. Dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining thus supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Refuge in myself, I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself, I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people, fourfold communities, to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support the